This is What If I Told You, the event psychology video podcast for event professionals in which Victoria Mady, event consultant and host, talks with the world's top minds in behavioral science, neuroscience, and psychology on how to transform events using insights about human behavior and mind. For more science-based tips, join Event Psychology Club at eventpsychology.gumroad.com. Also, check out Victoria's online course, Event Psychology Lab, at eventpsychology.thinkific.com, which covers key behavioral science concepts and offers research-backed solutions to your event challenges. This course is a unique opportunity to upgrade your industry skills and gain a competitive edge without adding to your already busy schedule. Now, enjoy the conversation.
Hello, I'm Victoria Mady, and this is What If I Told You, the Event Psychology podcast, where I talk all things event psychology, that is how to apply brain science insights in events. And today I'm very excited to welcome Roger Dooley to the show. Roger is an author and international keynote speaker. His books include Friction, The Untapped Force That Can Be Your Most Powerful Advantage, and Brainfluence, 100 Ways to Persuade and Convince Consumers with Neuromarketing. He writes the popular blog Neuromarketing as well as a column at Forbes.com. He co-founded and later sold College Confidential, the leading college-bound website. Has been a serial entrepreneur since he left a senior strategy position at a Fortune 1000 company to enter the then nascent home computer market. Roger, thank you for coming. It's so good to see you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Victoria.
First of all, I'm your longtime follower and a fan, Roger. and I was trying to recall when it was the first time that I came across your podcast or books, and I could not because it was that long ago. But,
I know, it seems like we've known each other forever, Victoria.
Right. But what I remember well, though, is that I've learned so many interesting things, again, from your blogs, from your articles in Forbes and elsewhere. And one of your interviews with Teddy Usher inspired me to write one of my what turned out to be one of my most popular blogs, Are We Ready for Event Neuroscientists? And it inspired me to look more closely at what event professionals can learn from neuroscience. So thank you for all the inspiration, for all the insights that you share. And I hope we can discuss a lot today. So let's get to it, right?
Sounds great.
Okay, so my first question is, your latest book, Friction, is essentially about simplifying processes to facilitate customers' decision-making and improve their experiences. So I wonder, why do you believe that friction is a critical thing for businesses?
Well, the biggest reason is these statistics show that friction or unnecessary effort, if you want to call it that, has a huge effect on customer loyalty. Gartner, the big market research company, did a huge study of customer service interactions where a customer had to in some way interact with a company, maybe a return, maybe support of some kind, or they had a question about a product they were going to buy, whatever. And they surveyed these customers, and what they found was pretty amazing. For the customers who said they had a high effort experience, in those cases, 96% of them said they would be disloyal to that brand, and that's about 10 times as high as those who said they had a low effort experience. And the stats go on. I think probably one other key one, Victoria, we know how important word of mouth is today. Everybody wants reviews, they want ratings, they want to know what other people think before they make a decision. And that study showed that of the customers who said they had a high effort experience, 88% said they would say bad things about the company, compared to just 1% of the low effort customers. And those are huge, huge differences between 10 times on loyalty and 88 times on saying bad things, bad word of mouth. So with those kinds of stats, it's clear that even small amounts of effort can change that customer experience. And, a lot of companies, from what I see, they pay lip service to customer experience. They say, we're very customer focused. Customer experience is our number one priority. But when you say, well, gee, why do you have this effortful process in place? Why are you making me set up an account with a really complicated password when this isn't really a high security type site? I said, oh, well, that's the best practice, or it's not that important. There's always a reason. People think they know all about it. In fact, I've had people tell me that when I've said, well, I want to talk about friction. Say, oh, we know all about friction. Let's talk about something else. If people knew all about friction, all about wasted effort, we would not have it so much today. I swear every day I come up with high friction experiences either on the web or in person or in a mobile app. And, it is just endemic. And in the event space, that's true too. I think that every event has several issues. First of all, they have to convert customers who are coming in who might register for the event. Then they have to provide an event experience, whether it's in person or virtual, that is also as smooth and seamless as possible. And, some succeed at that better than others. But I think that just focusing not only on the pure sort of features of the event, if you are having an event for accountants, clearly you have to provide something that is relevant to their current needs, something that will help them grow their business or solve whatever problems they're currently facing. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but you also have to focus on the experience itself. How easy is it? And how is there any place where somebody could get confused? And that confusion itself is a form of friction that causes people to drop out of a process.
And I know that you have on Twitter, you have this hashtag friction hunter, right? I love it. And you have a lot of experience attending events as a speaker, first of all, right? And I was wondering, what kind of friction do you see most often when it comes to events?
Right. Well, I think that there are some events, if we're looking at it purely from a speaker standpoint, and this is not really the most important thing for most event professionals, but I've been to some events where my experience as a speaker is truly effortless. Somebody has organized everything from the moment I set foot in the airport to the time when I'm walking on stage. Everything is obvious. Everything's clear. I know exactly how long I've got, what. And of course, even before the event, what the key needs of the audience are. What are they really looking for? Because, there's nothing worse than going in and saying, okay, well, this is what I think the audience wants. And then realizing, well, gee, this wasn't what they wanted. And so, you always try and make that effort to learn more about what their current problems are and so on. But a good event organizer has that, all in control and all the logistics and everything, so that you don't have to worry about that. Like, okay, well, how am I going to get there? Is the taxi going to get caught in traffic and whatnot? Somebody has figured that stuff out. But I think more importantly, from the attendee standpoint and the sponsor standpoint, those experiences have to be seamless too. There can't be confusion or things that are difficult to accomplish. Everything has to be very smooth and well organized. Now, one thing that I do see almost every event organizer do, which I think is a good metaphor for the entire customer experience or the event experience, is when you go into a large conference center where the event is in maybe one portion of it. Usually at every entrance, you will see directional signs showing that, hey, this is the way to our event. And we're going up escalators and around corners and whatnot. People will be able to find that registration desk. Because event organizers realize that people are going to get lost in this huge convention center and not know where to go. But, that is a metaphor for every aspect of the digital experience, the customer experience. People get lost along the way without those little breadcrumbs, without those signs to show them where to go. And I think if you visualize the whole experience in that way, then the event can be truly seamless.
I love this metaphor, actually. That's a good point, because when you walk your attendees through that experience and help them go in the right direction, right? That's exactly, then you will have more smooth experience and less friction. Then my question is, what can we do to learn to notice friction in event experiences?
Well, I have a personal technique that I always recommend in my talks, and that is to begin a personal friction log. And I've got one of these. It's well over 100 entries now. Whenever I encounter a difficult experience, whether it's online, typically they're online, sometimes they're in a mobile app, sometimes they're in person, I make a note of it. I have a Word document, but you could use a Google Doc or whatever your particular preference is. And I will sometimes do a little screen grab to remind me of exactly what the situation was. And I'll just maybe one or two sentences to describe it. Now, sometimes I will take these things that I notice and I will share them with the company. If I'm inclined to do that, if I have a contact with the company in particular, I may say, hey, I tried to register for this and I ran into this weird difficulty that prevented me from doing it. Other times, if I'm really annoyed, I may embarrass the company on social media. I'll put up a tweet with a photo of the ridiculous thing that I encountered and call them out on it. And sometimes they respond. Sometimes things get fixed. But really, the real value in doing this, even if you don't share it with the company or don't share it on social media, you are training your brain to see more friction. And it's there's proven science behind that. I won't get into the details, Victoria, but when you keep seeing things like that, you will be more likely to find it in your own experience. So because it's hard for you to see where the friction is because you know what you're supposed to do. When you use your website, when you use your mobile app, you know how things work. So once you start seeing it elsewhere, suddenly you realize, ooh, we do that too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a great advice. Actually, I think it's helpful when you start noticing it and intentionally remembering about those kind of frictions that you came across. Then it's easier to notice it elsewhere, right? And then when you notice it, of course, you can do something about it. Rather than just, go with the flow or do as you always did before, right? Then that's a great advice. Thank you so much for this.
Right. And Victoria, I think that people underestimate the importance of even very tiny amounts of effort. And the example that I always like to give is Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Way back in 1999, they were awarded a patent for one-click ordering, where you could just click one time and your order would be placed. Other companies thought, well, you can't patent something that simple and obvious. Barnes & Noble, the bookseller, was their biggest competitor then. They got in a big, they put something like that on their website, and they got in a big legal fight with Amazon right away. And, after millions of dollars in legal fees, after countless hours of management time, Amazon won. But what did they get for all that money? They got one tiny little click advantage. Barnes & Noble had to add one extra little click, a confirm order click after their buy now click. That's all. It doesn't seem like it'd be worth millions of dollars, but they thought it was. And one other smart person thought it was at that same time. Yeah. Steve Jobs and Apple were introducing their new music store, and they saw one click. They wanted it. They didn't try and fight it or create a workaround. They paid Amazon $1 million so they too could have that one tiny little click advantage over their competitors. And today, both of those companies, Apple and Amazon, are multi-trillion-dollar companies. And it's because they really understand the importance of tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of effort.
It reminds me about the registration button, on the event website, or generally registration process, because still, a lot of event organizers use lengthy registration forms. And then at some point, I came across, one-click registration, like an instant registration button. So when you click and you're in, you're at an event or you're registered. And so I found that, a great example from the event space, because I feel like this frictionless experience is so important. We don't really think about it as, the most powerful way to improve experiences, but it's about those tiny tweaks that you insert and that you use along the attendee journey that improves the overall satisfaction, right? So
Right.
I try to kind of remind about that and provide this example every time I, talk with event professionals about improving the experience.
Right. And speaking of event registration forms, Victoria, I have a real world little example that I can give you that I'm sure many of your audience members can identify with. I was completing a registration form for a conference that I wanted to attend, and it was a rather long form. It was like 12 fields where they wanted my job title and my company and all phone number, all this stuff. But I really wanted to attend this conference, so I said, okay, I'll fill it all out. When I went to fill it out, my browser, Chrome browser, which most people use, other browsers will do the same too, tried to auto-populate the form. So in other words, so you don't have to retype your whole email address. You don't have to retype your street address, your company name and all that. It populated every field with the word Roger. The coder, the developer who had created that form, had taken one field, obviously a first name field, and copied it to make out this whole long form, but never fixed the code underneath it. As a result, I had to type dozens, if not hundreds of extra keystrokes. Now I did that, but sometimes just that little bit of extra effort is going to be enough to say somebody, maybe they don't have that information. Sometimes there's something that the form wants, credit cards, for example. You can populate your credit cards automatically with Chrome and other browsers, but the form itself has to be set up that way. If I'm trying to register for something and I don't have my credit card in my pocket right then, maybe I won't be able to register if somehow autocomplete is messed up on the form. So that's something to test. Go to a browser, you have somebody try and complete the form and see if it populates everything correctly. Usually what I see, even today, Victoria, is most forms do some kind of auto-population, but often it's not quite 100%. They miss a few fields, or there's something wrong with it, or the credit card thing is a little bit messed up. And if you get that right, that's going to result in more registrations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I cannot highlight this advice enough. All right. So my other question is, you say in your book and elsewhere that there are times when adding friction can improve customer experience. Can you talk about that?
Well, I don't think we want to dwell on that too much, Victoria. There are occasionally times for certain luxury and high-end products, friction is part of the experience. If you're going to buy that Italian supercar, you don't just drop it in your shopping cart online and have it show up on your doorstep 2 days later. You put yourself on a waiting list and maybe go to the factory to pick it up, which, it's a different experience. Sometimes if somebody's going to make something that could be a mistake that would affect them, then adding a little bit of friction to that. In other words, like if you've ever clicked on something in your computer and it says, do you really want to reformat your hard drive? This will cause all your data to be lost. You say, no, I don't want to do that. I clicked the wrong thing. All too often, though, I see companies using this to benefit them, not the customer. For instance, subscriptions where I've subscribed to major business newspaper, and it's very easy to subscribe. It takes a few clicks, and suddenly you've got a trial subscription. But then to unsubscribe, you can't do it online. You have to call in during business hours to their customer service line, get into one phone queue. That person then says, you want to cancel, you need to go to this other phone queue, and then finally talk to somebody else who tries to talk you out of unsubscribing first, which to me is that's what's called a dark pattern by some in the user experience space, where you are doing something that benefits the company at the expense of the user. Because I'm sure a lot of people say, well, I'm going to cancel. Oh man, I'm not during business hours. I'll call later, call tomorrow or something. And then they forget. And this is the intention. They add friction to make it more difficult to unsubscribe. So I definitely don't recommend doing that. Do things in a way that will help the customer. And if you're going to do something that, maybe would be to their disadvantage, slow them down a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so, About your other book, Brainfluence, you wrote it back in 2011. That was your first book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, you share 100 ways to convince customers with neuromarketing techniques. So I wonder, what are some ways that kind of have stood the test of time and that you think are relevant to events that you can share?
Right. Well, Victoria, I think the fundamental principle that underlines all of the 100 different techniques in Brainfluence is that for human decision-making, 95% of those processes are non-conscious. Only 5% are conscious. And that's according to Gerald. That's not me. That's Gerald Zaltman of Harvard. Not that you can assign a perfect value to that, but fundamentally, we have to understand that our customers who may be event attendees, maybe sponsors and so on, a lot of their decision-making, a huge part of their decision-making is made non-consciously. Even in the B2B world, we think of B2B buyers as being very rational, but they too have all kinds of other concerns, some of which they won't tell you, others they aren't really directly aware of themselves, and they may not acknowledge that this is a concern, but it's there. And I think if you think of buying a car, why did you buy that car? Oh, well, it had the number of seats I needed for my family. It's got great gas mileage, great resale value, but there are all those factors that under the surface, status, what will my neighbors think of me when I pull up in this car? Will they think I'm successful or not? Will this car make me more attractive to other people? And, all these other things that motivate people. And in the B2B world, there are certainly some of those same concerns. By making this decision, whether it is sponsoring an event, whether it's registering for a conference, what are people going to think of me? Am I going to come back and have people think that I was goofing off, or will I come back with valuable knowledge that will impress people? Will this advance my career? Will it hinder my career? There are all these questions. And even in signing up for a conference, we know that attractive conference destinations tend to do a little bit better. If you were inviting people to Las Vegas or Orlando, you'll probably get more attendees than if you're inviting them to Omaha or someplace that isn't really much of a fantastic destination. If you're Warren Buffett, you can invite people to Omaha. Everybody else, maybe you try Vegas or someplace else. But I mean, again, generally people would not say, well, I'm going to this conference because it's in a cool place where I know I can have some fun outside of conference hours. But of course, that plays into decision-making, both for sponsors and for attendees.
That's a good point. So going forward, do you have some advice for event professionals about applying neuromarketing, like neuromarketing 2.0, Yeah. So what kind of things do you see, do you envision might be relevant for event professionals in 2023 and beyond?
Sure. Well, the neuromarketing 2.0, Victoria, is my term. It's not generally accepted yet, but to me, we have entered a new era of neuromarketing and consumer neuroscience. The part of neuromarketing that was most often termed consumer neuroscience was the use of tools like EEG, facial coding, eye tracking to measure people's responses to specific things like an advertisement or video content or new packaging or something like that. And this tended to be done in a laboratory and was very expensive to do. You had to invite subjects who probably weren't your actual customers into a laboratory. Often the work was done by specialized companies who knew how to interpret the results. So really only a tool for big brands looking at big problems. New ad campaign, big new package redesign, a Super Bowl ad, those kinds of things you could afford to do neuromarketing on. But what I see now, and this was particularly driven by the pandemic, it was happening before, but when suddenly we couldn't do in-lab testing because we couldn't get random strangers into a room with you, it really pushed a lot of development in this area. And I think that from an event standpoint, there are some very interesting things. Usually we learn about events, about how attendees perceive events and about speakers and parts of the event and so on from surveys. And surveys are notoriously unreliable. Now, like if half the people say this wasn't a speech, it was a sales pitch, okay, that's probably pretty reliable. That speaker is not somebody you want to invite back. But often they may not really be able to characterize what they really feel. You don't understand. Maybe if somebody was didn't get fantastic ratings, what was wrong with that speaker? And these tools of neuromarketing really previously couldn't provide you much help with that, because at least in a real-time event. But now there is the ability to do smartwatch and fitness device neuromarketing studies where you could have some of the people in the room with just a smartwatch, Apple or Android, and a mobile phone app, and their responses to the content that they're seeing could be measured second by second. And you could see whether they were engaged with the content in the speaker, whether they felt safe or maybe felt threatened. So I think that's really one very exciting example. And also, these tools can be used now very inexpensively, say, to evaluate your marketing content, your website, to using inexpensive eye tracking, for example. Used to be you would again bring people into a lab. Now eye tracking can be done with devices like your webcam, your phone cam, your tablet cam, and so on. And there are even new AI tools that simulate human eye tracking. In other words, they use machine learning with thousands of human eye tracking studies to create an algorithm that would predict when somebody looks at this ad, this website, this package, what will they be focused on? And these and other tools are bringing the cost of using neuromarketing down tremendously.
I agree. I think we live in exciting times because technologies provide us with many ways to collect data that can be used in smart ways and improve experiences over and over again. So yeah, that's a great point. And I wanted to ask you, there are so many topics that you cover in your work, and it's about customer experiences, loyalty, friction, market research, neuromarketing. So what kind of topics do you think are the most relevant for event professionals?
Well, what I'm focused on as my number one keynote right now is increasing customer loyalty, but simultaneously increasing employee engagement. There is a huge disconnect between employees and companies, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Actually, it's even worse in many countries. Only 1 out of 3 employees in the U.S. is engaged with their work or their workplace. In other countries, on average worldwide, it's 1 in 5. In Italy, where I'm headed for a couple of speeches in a few weeks, the number is 1 in 25. This is data from Gallup, the big polling company. Only 1 out of 25, only 4 out of 100 employees in Italy, according to their research, are actively engaged with their work or their workplace. When you've got a workforce that is really just showing up for the paycheck, they are not going to deliver the incredible customer experience that you want. They aren't going to bring you that information that will help you improve your customer experience. They're going to do their job and they're going to go home. And so to me, this whole fusion of customer experience and employee engagement, mainly by focusing on effort reduction, not on spending a lot of money to do fancy things to provide incredible surprise and delight experiences, but just focus on making things easier. To me, it's such a simple message, but it's such a powerful message. And that's my primary topic. I do also focus on using neuromarketing, which can include some of the tools that I talked about, but also using behavioral science to market better. And the reason that's important is because, we can motivate our customers by giving them discounts. We can motivate them by giving them free shipping if it's a product, or by increasing our advertising spend and doing all these other things. But all that is very expensive to do. We can also motivate people by using behavioral science techniques, the science of influence. And we see that in the event space. A lot of events use scarcity. There's only so many seats available. There's only so many seats left. This special deal expires on this date at midnight, so you got to get your reservation in now. These are using a Robert Cialdini principle of scarcity. And there are so many tools like that don't really cost anything to use, but can really drive more conversions, more sales.
To your point about employee motivation, I think it's a very important topic, especially in our industry, because there's so much burnout, hugely critical for companies to understand how to make it easier for their employees and how to motivate them in ways that are really work. A couple of final questions for you. And the first is, what would you say is the single one science insight that event professionals should apply immediately?
Well, I guess I would say that really for all of my work for the last almost 20 years now, the underlying driver has been that insight that the vast majority of human decision-making processes are non-conscious. Once we as marketers, as event professionals, and so on, really understand and internalize that, we start thinking about all the things we can do to appeal to that non-conscious part of our customer's brain. I mean, there are literally dozens and dozens of cognitive biases that affect how people make decisions, how they think, how they interpret the information that you're giving them. And once we understand those and start using them and saying this is just as important as talking about some very specific benefits from what we're offering, then I think we can be truly successful.
That's a great insight. Thank you so much. And my last question is a signature question that I ask every guest on this show. The podcast title is What If I Told You? So can you complete the sentence with one takeaway relevant to our conversation? What if I told you?
Well, what if I told you that one tiny little customer click was worth millions of dollars to both Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs, two of the smartest business people of this century?
Right, that's a great one. Thank you. Thank you so much, Roger, for joining me today. That was a great conversation, and I invite everyone to connect with Roger on LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, get his books and listen to his podcast. And thank you for tuning in to What If I Told You, the Event Psychology Podcast. For more brain science insights and for this episode recap, I invite you to join the Event Psychology Club. Also, if you want to upgrade your skills and get research-based solutions for your events, I invite you to take the Event Psychology Lab online course that I created for event profs like you. Until next time, bye-bye.